A year ago, we had a good police department. We still have good officers and a good police department. It's just in a state of confusion right now.
Change is coming hard to the Indianapolis Police Department as its officers try to adapt to a sweeping transformation that began a year ago and is still underway. Well, you've heard about it, but do you really know what community policing really is? And perhaps more importantly, do the officers themselves understand and support it?
Tonight, the News 8 I-Team begins a series of reports on the transformation of IPD to community policing. And as I-Team reporter Neil Moore found, so far, police reform has taken a bumpy flight, while department morale remains grounded.
How are you doing today, Mrs. Anderson? That guy that's been holding up the laundromats, we don't have any new information on that.
Community policing is making its way across the city, well underway on the south side and being phased in other districts.
Any problems today?
Not today.
Well, good. There's always tomorrow.
It's an approach to law enforcement that in some ways is so old it's new. Patrol officers becoming more familiar with the people on their beat, helping them solve neighborhood problems.
What kind of problems are you having out back there? He says a lot of people breaking in the fence, I guess.
This really is just back to basics. This is not any fancy stuff.
Mayor Stephen Goldsmith has been the driving force behind community policing, as well as personnel shifts designed to move more police out of headquarters and into the districts.
And we should allow them to use their intelligence. That means that they meet people, they understand their problems, and they solve them.
Patrol officers are still charged with their usual responsibilities, responding to emergency calls, investigating crimes, and making arrests.
Have a seat, watch your head.
In some parts of the city now, they're spending more time out of their cars, talking to business owners and attending neighborhood meetings to listen to residents' concerns.
There have been several places that had privacy fences that they're picking on them.
Having the police in the neighborhood meetings makes a big difference because people can talk to them.
To many officers, community policing still sounds a lot like business as usual.
We've been doing this for years, and even if they scrap this idea tomorrow, we'll still continue doing it.
A lot of officers feel like, what do they mean? We're going to this. I've been doing this for years. So there's a little bit of personal insult involved there.
In fact, IPD veterans say the department has been deeply shaken by the way the city has moved toward community policing.
The morale is down. The morale is probably as low as I've seen it in 22 years on the police department.
It's probably the lowest that I've seen in 27 years of being on the police department.
Indeed, an I-Team survey of IPD officers reveals some apparently widespread concerns about community policing. Questionnaires were distributed by the Fraternal Order of Police throughout the department. 116 were returned, and here's what we found. Nearly 3/4 of those responding described their morale as either low or very low. An equal percentage described the city's implementation of community policing as poor. Only about 5% thought of it as adequate. At the same time, 3 out of 4 officers supported the concept of community policing. In other words, good idea, bad execution. And for some time now, Chief Toller has been engaged in damage control, trying to rescue rank-and-file morale.
We've admitted that we were wrong, and that I can understand the frustration and the lack of information on the street, and we're correcting that.
So how could this happen downtown? Why is it then that after lengthy planning, including input from highly paid consultants, was the implementation of community policing so poorly received? Well, tomorrow night we'll have an examination of the root causes, more of them, to the police frustration, including Mayor Goldsmith's role in all of this.
Yeah, Neil, you mentioned that survey. Was it difficult getting police cooperation on this?
Well, not at all. Here, the surveys right here has indicated more than 100 of them came in, and lots of officers very willing to express their concerns. One of the officers writing here, "I've never seen an organization in such disarray and for such a long period of time." He goes on to say, from top to bottom, no one is against change, but what's going on or what's going on to happen next here, we simply do not know. He says his morale is good, but the rest of the departments is the lowest that he's seen. So lots of problems within the department, certainly.
Okay. Part 2 tomorrow night.
That's right.
All right, Neil, thanks very much.
Neil.
Morale at the Indianapolis Police Department took a nosedive in the past year due to some early mistakes in the implementation of community policing. IPD officials are hoping a mid-course correction will move the rank and file squarely behind the new concept. Our I-Team has been investigating the department, and as News 8's Neil Moore tells us now, police efficiency and manpower are troubling concerns for many officers.
7:10 by my watch. 7:15, I'll put you on the air.
For more than a year now, community policing has been the topic of discussion at roll call sites around Indianapolis. And once it's fully implemented, there will be a fundamental shift in the way these officers go about their jobs. Some will patrol in traditional ways, while others troubleshoot problems, hopefully heading off crime before it starts.
If I can go to a run, actually be given the opportunity to spend some time with it, then there's not going to be a repeat runs all the time.
3/4 of the officers responding to an I-Team survey support the concept of community policing, but the vast majority thought the city's handling of the transition less than adequate.
So where's the problem? Well, for one thing, many members of the department believe they don't have enough manpower to take on the new responsibilities that are associated with community policing.
A lot of officers would like to go out and do exactly what they're talking about, but it's just that we don't have the manpower to do that.
For this department, I think that a minimal or perhaps 500 additional officers.
Most of those responding to our survey wanted to see at least 100 additional officers hired. Nearly half thought the force should be expanded by 200 or more.
We can get more of the officers on the street, we can reconfigure their time, but the chance of hiring large numbers of additional officers is very slim.
Police Chief James Toller has his work cut out for him. He hopes a manpower study now underway will justify the hiring of at least 200 new officers.
It's manpower intensive, and we're not going to be able to do it to the extent that we should without additional manpower.
But there are other fences to mend within the department. In the past year, personnel were shifted from police headquarters into the districts, and often the transfers came without explanation or retraining. This was perhaps the biggest point of confusion within the department.
This person over here is calling this person and say, how did you do your job? And this person say, hey, I can't talk to you, I'm trying to learn my own.
Lieutenant Mike Bosley received 4 transfers within the last year, from the training academy to narcotics, to vice, to a newly created crime information desk, to another new operation, the crime analysis unit. He's now seeking computer training on his own just to get the job done.
These officers back there are just really working their tails off to make this thing go. But they've not received the training, and that's just this unit, and I see that all over the department.
Chief Toller admits that the repeated transfers and other key changes were made with precious little input from within the department. The lack of communication and the rush to change are responsible for big morale problems now, and a significant number of officers believe Mayor Stephen Goldsmith was in too big a hurry to reinvent IPD.
When the mayor decides that something is a good idea, historically he's kind of wanted it done yesterday, and that's not going to work here. I just don't think it can.
The biggest consolation among the rank and file is that Chief Toller is now seeking their input and seems to be willing to reconsider some of the decisions made in the last year. But some tell us they're still waiting for evidence that things have really changed.
Well, we're hoping and we're watching. It just remains to be seen whether they're going to do it right this time.
Now, Mayor Goldsmith certainly recognizes there are morale problems within IPD, but he maintains there is a base of support within the department for community policing, and the mayor's aggressive stance on community policing is based on this basic premise, that the old style of policing just simply doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, Neil, back to the issue of manpower. If more police officers are needed, and yet the mayor has to watch the budget, then what's the solution for that?
Well, it's certainly a difficult situation for him to try and deal with. Mayor Goldsmith does, though, believe that by rethinking the way that the police respond to the 911 runs that the police officers make, that will ultimately free up more of those officers to then pursue these community policing programs that they are setting up at this time. So shifting some people around, freeing them off of those constant repeat radio runs might allow them more time to go out, go to these neighborhood meetings and to talk with the people who live and work in those neighborhoods. That's his theory anyway.
Okay, Neil, very good. Neil Moore with the I-Team. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
This week, the News 8 I-Team has been investigating the Indianapolis Police Department and its community policing plan. While the switch to a new style of law enforcement is just getting off the ground here, there is a clear track record to be found in other cities. Tonight, I-Team reporter Neil Moore takes us to St. Louis for a look at community policing along the banks of the Mississippi.
In many ways, St. Louis is much like Indianapolis. Its downtown has been revitalized, but certain neighborhoods struggle with crime and racial tension.
Some black guy walking in with a bag, he come up to me and said, "Hey, sir, you got any change?" I said, "What?" He said, "Don't talk to me that way, you white hawky son of a bitch."
3 years ago, the St. Louis Police Department changed its crime attack. Mike Scott now leads the switch to community policing.
Many police officers, especially veteran officers, have known in their hearts for a long time that what we're doing is not working. They're anxious for an opportunity to change.
But the change was greeted with some skepticism.
I was offended that they brought in a guy and paying him $52,000 a year to coordinate something. Young Mike Scott. Here's a guy with 3 years police experience. Wow.
Now, Crow and his partner, Patrolman Rock Nilhaas, are, in a sense, old police dogs that have been taught new tricks.
A lot of officers are reluctant to get on board, but they're finding more and more that if they get on board, life's a lot easier for them all the way around.
Here's how it works. Community policing requires officers to be more proactive, less reactive. Instead of just responding to crime after the fact, officers are encouraged to try and prevent it. They identify potential trouble spots and troublemakers and welcome public contact by wearing pagers.
As soon as the pager goes off, I get right on the phone and call the people back. They feel like it's a more one-on-one type situation that way.
The key difference, though, is freedom to solve neighborhood problems. Officers call on city agencies for crime-fighting help, everything from replacing burned-out streetlights to shutting down known crack houses using zoning and health ordinances.
We got rid of this guy, and that eliminated all the calls on that corner.
And there's an enormous amount of good work that can be done when people know, trust, and respect each other.
Community police officers also spend less time in their cars and more time with the public.
You know who did it? You wish you did it. Once the neighbors realize that you're more involved than just driving up and down the street in their community, you'll be amazed at the response that you get from the community as a whole.
Certainly not every police officer in St. Louis has bought into community policing. Not every person that lives here knows what it is or knows if it works. But one gets the sense in St. Louis that community policing is acting as a kind of bridge to those communities that need police help the most.
Every city that I've been aware of that has given police officers in the community an opportunity to work together has shown dramatic results. Is it a guarantee to eliminate crime and problems in our cities? No, it's not.
At first glance, crime statistics would seem to bear that out, but the St. Louis story is somewhat contradictory. Last year, St. Louis logged more than 60,000 incidents of serious crime. That's almost twice the number recorded by Indianapolis. Service districts for the two cities are essentially the same in population, yet St. Louis has about 600 more officers. In response, St. Louis seems to have concluded more crime necessitates more police. And it's unclear what difference community policing has made.
There's no single statistic that will tell us whether or not this is working.
Police brass here believe the public measures success in other ways.
Their perceptions of safety, their ability to see an improvement in their neighborhoods, that's what we're looking for.
You like the camera?
Still, pockets of resistance remain, and Scott cautions Indianapolis not to expect too much too soon from community policing. But he adds, given adequate time and proper introduction, acceptance will come for the right reasons.
They're letting you as a police officer determine or decide what is important and what's not now. It makes you feel good that it's your ideal. It's something that you can label your own to work on.
And let's reiterate this important point. Experts say community policing will not happen overnight, and IPD now says full implementation won't happen here for several years. That's a change from the initial vision that was stated earlier, Mike and Debbie.
And once again, when did it begin here, and far along is the conversion to community policing now?
It's coming along slowly. It was started about a year ago here in Indianapolis, mostly on the city's south side. It is there that community policing is most developed, but there are some pockets of change that are unfolding across the city. And tomorrow night, we'll have some final thoughts, including a look at how the public is receiving this idea.
Okay, Neil, thank you.
Neil Moore with the I-Team. Well, as we've been telling you this week, the Indianapolis Police Department is undergoing a radical change. The city's switch to community policing has left many officers with mixed feelings.
Tonight, News 8's Neil Moore concludes his I-Team report with a look at how community policing is being received in neighborhoods where the concept is taking root.
The security's been on the left constantly, and they're sneaking right past us. So.
Repeated break-ins at this North Side auto repair shop are a problem. Now it's up to officers Paul Siselski and Andy Starks to help figure out a solution.
Mark had said he was going to get some more lights for the lot.
To these people that own this business, it's very important to them. Customers leaving their cars here in the lot, getting broken into.
Solving security problems is what community policing is all about. So too is crime prevention.
As an individual, I can patrol this neighborhood all day. I can catch a thing here or there. But if I've got 1,000 set of eyes and ears watching things, helping me, I can do a lot more to serve the community.
For the concept to work in Indianapolis, police need community support.
I think it's an excellent idea, and my prayers are that it will work. However, people won't believe in this system or won't even work to try and make it successful until they have gained trust.
Thankfully, community policing does have kind of a fuzzy ring to it and a warm feeling, because I think that has helped pushing the idea along.
Now that the substation's out here, I'll be more comfortable.
Many neighborhood groups welcome community policing and talk of reconnecting with officers, but it provides no guarantee of improved police-community relations.
I kind of somewhat think that our police are more afraid of the people in the various neighborhoods. They're afraid of us.
Yeah.
Yesterday we experienced once again an officer with a negative attitude giving negative vibes out to the media.
Still, people like the idea of retaking control of their neighborhoods.
We might maybe cure a problem here, but it will just move someplace else unless there's another group over there to say, hey, you're not going to do it here either.
Some IPD officers are buying community policing, others are not. In our I-Team survey, most responding officers predict it will only marginally reduce crime. Indeed, some fear it will actually go up.
Just because you know me and I come by and shake your hand every 2 or 3 days, you're going to feel a little bit safer, where in fact you're going to be less safer than you really are.
But defenders say crime stats go up because reporting increases with community policing.
You're more comfortable with telling me what's going on. So some of the cases that maybe you didn't tell me about a burglary, or you didn't tell me, people who don't talk about rape.
Although Mayor Goldsmith and Chief Toller have high hopes for community policing, it hasn't worked everywhere. In Houston, it was called neighborhood-oriented policing, or NOP. Critics called it nobody's on patrol. Many Houstonians did support the approach, but public outcry over rising crime led to its virtual abandonment.
I want to shift the focus some. I want a more crime suppression, crime fighting attitude among the officers.
From St. Louis comes this warning not to use community policing only as a public relations tool, as some Indianapolis officers suspect.
If it seems simply as a balm to smooth over tensions in a community, this is not necessarily the way to go.
But it is the way this city is going. The mayor believes Indianapolis has no choice.
And what we need to do is get officers the authority to do things that reduce crime long term. That means they have to arrest bad guys, and they have to create safe areas.
It's an experiment in progress. It's worked in other cities. It hasn't worked in other cities. What's it going to do here? It started out very poorly. It can either get better, it can stay the same, or it can get worse. And right now, we're on hold. Hopeful.
In Indianapolis, Neil Moore, Wish TV, News 8.
Experts say community policing works best when taught to officers from the very beginning. Currently, new IPD recruits are getting such instruction at the Police Training Academy.